As you watch this video, at this very moment, planes are crossing the skies, carrying entire Jewish families toward Israel. Full suitcases, stamped passports, heavy hearts, and a decision that changes absolutely everything. Leaving behind the life they knew in Paris, in London, in New York, in Sydney, to start over from scratch in the Promised Land. We're not talking about dozens of people. We're talking about thousands, tens of thousands. And the most impressive thing of all, this isn't just a migration trend that political analysts can explain with charts and statistics. What is happening in 2026 has already been written, documented, and detailed over 2,500 years ago in the pages of the Bible. And if you think I'm exaggerating, stay with me until the end of this video, because the numbers are frightening, the stories are real, and what they reveal about the time we live in will leave you completely floored. Let's start with what the official data shows us. Israel's Ministry of Aliyah and Integration reported that in 2025, approximately 21,900 new immigrants arrived in the country, coming from 105 different nations. And here is the detail that many people ignore. Although the total number fell by about a third compared to the previous year, this happened almost exclusively because of the drastic reduction in Russian immigration, which plummeted 57%. When we remove Russia from the equation and look at the rest of the world, the scenario is completely different. Immigration from Western countries has skyrocketed. 13,600 non-Russian immigrants arrived in Israel in 2025, a 23.6% increase over 2024, and an impressive 81% growth compared to 2023. Think about these numbers with me. The United States sent 4,150 new immigrants to Israel, the highest number in 4 years, a 12% increase. France had a 45% jump, with 3,300 Jews making Aliyah. The United Kingdom grew 19%, reaching 840 new immigrants. Australia increased 67%. And, according to data from the Jewish Agency, more than 30,000 Jews around the world opened immigration processes for Israel in 2025 alone. 30,000 families thinking, planning, deciding, it's time to go back home. And for 2026, the Israeli government has set an official goal of absorbing 30,000 new immigrants, mainly coming from countries facing rising waves of anti-Semitism. And look at this detail. The Israeli government created a program called Aliyah HaTekuma, which means the Aliyah of Resurrection, with the goal of reducing the eligibility approval time to 30 days. Creating service centers in French and English, operating 24 hours a day, 6 days a week, and offering monthly grants during the first year of adaptation. Israel is literally preparing to open its arms on a scale we haven't seen in decades. And do you know what's most powerful about all this? 1/3 of these immigrants are between 18 and 35 years old. They are young. They are professionals. They are doctors, engineers, programmers. 541 doctors made Aliyah in 2025. 93 of them came from North America. This is not a movement of despair. It's a movement of conviction. More than half of North American immigrants stated that the main motivation was solidarity with Israel. They're not running away. They're choosing. But to understand why this wave is growing with such force, we need to look at the other side of the coin. What is happening in the nations these Jews are leaving? And what is happening is something that should alarm any human being with a minimum of conscience. Anti-Semitism has exploded in the world. And when I say exploded, I'm not using a figure of speech. The Center for Research on Anti-Semitism recorded more than 33,883 anti-Semitic incidents in just the first 7 months of 2025, a 9.4% increase compared to the same period last year. That's an average of almost 18 incidents per day. 18 attacks against Jews per day in the world. Every single day. In Germany, Berlin recorded 2,267 anti-Semitic crimes in 2025, the highest number ever recorded in the city's history. In Italy, the Jewish community documented 963 incidents, also a historical record. In France, there were almost 1,600 anti-Semitic acts in 2024. In the United States, the FBI recorded a 270% increase in anti-Semitic incidents between September and November 2023, and the numbers continued to rise in 2024 and 2025. In Europe as a whole, the European Union Agency for Fundamental Rights recorded an increase of up to 400% in anti-Semitic activities since the start of the war in Gaza. And 96% of European Jews interviewed said they had already experienced anti-Semitism even before October 7, 2023. But cold numbers don't tell the whole story. Let me tell you what actually happened. On October 2nd, 2025, on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish calendar, a man drove a car into worshippers and attacked people with a knife at the Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester, England. 2 people were murdered while praying on the Day of Atonement. The attacker shouted hateful phrases while trying to break into the synagogue. Rabbi Daniel Walker locked the doors and saved the congregation, while the terrorist banged his knife against the glass in Manchester, England, in the middle of the 21st century. And as if that weren't enough, on December 14, 2025, 2 gunmen opened fire on a Hanukkah celebration at Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia. 15 people were murdered. 15. Among them, an 87-year-old Holocaust survivor, a rabbi who was a father of 5, and a girl only 10 years old. 1,000 people were there celebrating the Festival of Lights when bullets began to rain down from a walkway. It was the worst shooting in Australia in nearly 30 years. And it was a targeted, deliberate, planned attack against the Jewish community. I want you to take that in. Synagogues being attacked, religious celebrations turned into war zones, Jewish schools surrounded by armed guards, Jewish restaurants vandalized, Holocaust symbols spray-painted on walls. In Australia, after the Bondi attack, the government launched a national public inquiry into anti-Semitism. The Sydney Opera House projected a menorah onto its iconic sails on the second night of Hanukkah. The entire country stopped for a minute of silence on December 21st. Think about the scale of this. An entire country stopping to mourn an attack against Jews. This hadn't happened since the Second World War. And in England, after the Manchester attack, Prime Minister Keir Starmer rushed back from a trip to Denmark to chair an emergency meeting. He said on national television, "A vile individual committed a terrorist attack that targeted Jews because they are Jews and attacked Great Britain because of our values." And British Jewish organizations responded with a chilling phrase. This attack was something we feared was coming. And now think. If you were Jewish living in Paris, where 40% of Jews are already considering emigrating, or in Rome, home to Europe's oldest Jewish community with roots dating back to the 2nd century, BC, is once again discussing whether it's time to leave, what would you do? Where would you go? An Israeli demographer named Sergio Della Pergola, one of the world's leading experts in Jewish demography, asked exactly this question. If I'm a Jew in Rome, I go to Paris, it's worse there. From Paris to Brussels, it's even worse. To the United States, it's almost impossible now with the immigration restrictions. Canada, Australia, anti-Semitism is growing everywhere. And then he concluded with the question that echoes in the minds of millions. And Israel is a country at war. But even being a country at war, even with missiles and threats, it's to Israel that they are going. Because deep down, there is something stronger than fear. There is the calling, and it's exactly here that the Bible enters the conversation. Because what we are seeing is not just a humanitarian crisis. It's not just a sociological phenomenon that can be explained by theories of forced migration. It's a prophetic pattern repeating itself before our eyes. And this pattern was described with surgical precision by prophets who lived millennia ago. In times when these countries didn't even exist, these nations didn't even have names, and the idea of a people scattered across 105 countries was something absolutely unimaginable. And even so they wrote. And what they wrote is being fulfilled now. Before we get into the specific prophecies, I want to remind you of something the Talmud teaches in the Megillah tractate. The sages say that the dispersion of Israel among the nations was, paradoxically, an act of divine mercy. Why? Because if they were concentrated in one place, a single empire could destroy them completely. But scattered among all nations, no earthly power would ever be able to exterminate the Jewish people completely. And history has proven exactly that. Empires were born and died, persecutors came and went, but the Jewish people survived. The Babylonians tried, the Romans tried, the Inquisition tried, the Nazis tried, and they all failed. Because there is a divine promise that no army on earth can nullify. And now, after centuries of dispersion, we are seeing the fulfillment of the second part of that promise, the gathering. Open with me to the book of Jeremiah, chapter 16, verses 14 and 15. The prophet says this, "Therefore, behold, the days are coming, says the Lord, when it shall no longer be said, As the Lord lives, who brought up the children of Israel from the land of Egypt. But as the Lord lives, who brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north and from all the lands where he had driven them. For I will cause them to return to their land, which I gave to their fathers." Look at what Jeremiah is saying. A time will come when the return of the Jews to their land will be so spectacular, so grand, so undeniable, that it will even eclipse the Exodus from Egypt. The Exodus, the greatest event in the history of Israel until then. And Jeremiah is saying, wait, because what comes next will be even greater. He says, from all the lands to which he had driven them, from all of them. From France, from England, from the United States, from Australia, Russia, Brazil, from every nation where the Jewish people were scattered. And the prophet Ezekiel, who is recognized as one of the major prophets in the Old Testament and is especially known for his vivid and detailed visions, confirms this in an even more thorough and specific way. In the book of Ezekiel, chapter 36, verses 24 to 28, God himself makes a clear and direct declaration to the people of Israel. Do you see the sequence? First, God takes them from among the nations. Then he purifies them. Then he transforms the heart. And this happens in the land that he gave to their fathers. The land of Israel is a concrete plan, detailed, chronological. And every time a plane lands at Ben Gurion with Jewish families on board, every time a French mother decides that her children will no longer study in fear, every time an American doctor leaves New York to rebuild their life in Jerusalem, these words of Ezekiel gain flesh, gain a face, gain a passport. And speaking of Ezekiel, it is impossible to talk about the return without mentioning the vision of the Valley of Dry Bones, which is in chapter 37. God shows the prophet a valley full of dry bones, completely dead, without any life. And he asks, "Son of man, can these bones live?" Ezekiel answers with wisdom, "Lord God, you know." And then God commands the prophet to prophesy over those bones. And as the word is declared, the bones begin to come together, bone to bone, tendons appear, flesh grows, skin covers them, and finally the Spirit enters them and they stand up as an enormous army. And God explains the meaning. These bones are the whole house of Israel. Behold, they say, our bones are dried up, our hope is perished, we are completely cut off. And then he promises, behold, I will open your graves and cause you to come up out of your graves, O my people, and bring you into the land of Israel. This prophecy was fulfilled in a spectacular way in 1948, when from the ashes of the Holocaust, from the concentration camps, from the greatest attempt at extermination in history, the state of Israel was born. The dry bones lived and continue to live, and each new wave of Aliyah is more flesh, more sinew, more life forming over these bones. And there's more. Isaiah chapter 43 verses 5 and 6 brings another piece of this prophetic puzzle. Fear not, for I am with you. I will bring your offspring from the east and gather you from the west. I will say to the north, give up, and to the south, do not hold back. Bring my sons from afar and my daughters from the ends of the earth. Look at the cardinal points, east, west, north, and south. It is a global summons. And when Israel announces immigration fairs in Australia, Mexico, Argentina, Ukraine, Georgia, South Africa, with over 20,000 participants around the world, what are we seeing if not exactly that? The children of Israel are being brought from afar, from the ends of the earth, from the east, from the west, from the north, and from the south, exactly as Isaiah described. And look, in 2026, about 1,200 members of the Bnei Menashe community from India are expected to make Aliyah. The Bnei Menashe are descendants of the tribe of Manasseh, one of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. They lived isolated in northeast India for over 2,700 years, maintaining Jewish traditions, keeping the Shabbat, practicing circumcision, singing songs about the crossing of the Red Sea in the local language. And now they are returning home from the east, exactly as Isaiah said. When these things fit together with such perfection, when prophecy and reality overlap with such precision, you have to ask yourself, is this a coincidence or is it divine design? For those who study the Bible in depth, the pattern of dispersion and return is perhaps the most recurring theme in all of Scripture. Deuteronomy chapter 30 verses 1 to 5. Written by Moses, even before the people entered the Promised Land, it already anticipated everything. When all these things come upon you, the blessing and the curse that I have set before you, and you call them to mind among all the nations, where the Lord your God has driven you, and you return to the Lord your God, then the Lord your God will bring you back from your captivity, and have compassion on you, and gather you again from among all the peoples where the Lord your God has scattered you. Even if your exiles are at the ends of the heavens, from there the Lord your God will gather you and take you, and the Lord your God will bring you to the land that your ancestors possessed, and you will possess it. Moses wrote this over 3,300 years ago, and perfectly described what we see today, a people scattered to the ends of the earth, being gathered. And note the precious detail. Even if they are at the ends of the heavens, it doesn't matter how far away they are, or if they are in Australia, which the ancients didn't even know existed, or if they are in Brazil, the Americas, Asia, from the ends of the earth, from anywhere. God promised to bring them back. And here is something that many preachers do not mention, but it is fundamental to understanding what is happening today. Anti-Semitism, as horrific and condemnable as it is, historically functions as one of the instruments that pushes the Jewish people back to their land. I am not saying that God approves of hatred, not at all. On the contrary, God condemns anti-Semitism with the same force with which he curses those who curse the children of Abraham. Genesis chapter 12 verse 3 is crystal clear and unappealable. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. This promise has never been revoked. But history shows in an undeniable way that repeatedly, when persecution intensifies, the return accelerates, as if the hatred of the nations were, paradoxically, the fuel that ignites the flame of return. It was like this with the pogroms in Russia at the end of the 19th century, which generated the first waves of Aliyah. It was like this with the Holocaust, which led to the creation of the State of Israel in 1948. It was like this with the expulsion of Jews from Arab countries in the 1950s and 60s, when nearly 900,000 Jews were forced to leave lands where they had lived for centuries, losing everything to start over in Israel. It was like this with the fall of the Soviet Union in the 1990s, when more than 1 million Russian Jews made Aliyah in a few years, completely transforming the Israeli economy and technology. And it is like this now with the explosion of anti-Semitism after October 7th, which is pushing Jews back to Israel, in numbers we haven't seen in years. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, recently said something revealing when announcing the emergency immigration plan called Aliyah HaTekuma. He recognized that the growing anti-Semitism in the West is a historical window for Israel, and the Minister of Immigration, Ophir Sofer, summarized it in a phrase worth repeating. In most countries, people flee during a war. In Israel, people come to help. Think about it. Where else in the world do people immigrate to a country at war? What human logic explains someone leaving the comfort of Manhattan, the apparent safety of a London suburb, or the beauty of the Australian coast to live in a land surrounded by enemies where rocket sirens are part of daily life. It's something that transcends reason and defies all conventional political analysis. It's the spirit of those words of Isaiah echoing in the hearts of men and women who may not even know their fulfilling prophecy. Fear not, for I am with you. Rabbi Yehoshua Fass, co-founder of the organization Nefesh B'Nefesh, which facilitates Aliyah from North America, said the 2025 numbers reflect something greater than statistics. They reflect a national impact, a collective decision of a people choosing to return home during one of the most difficult times in Israel's history. And that is supernatural. And for those who think this is just a temporary phase, that the return can be reversed, the prophet Amos brings the final verdict. Amos chapter 9, verses 14 and 15. And I will bring back my people Israel from captivity, and they shall rebuild the waste cities, and in them they shall dwell, and they shall plant vineyards, and drink the wine thereof. They shall also make gardens, and eat the fruit of them. And I will plant them upon their land, and they shall no more be pulled up out of their land which I have given them, saith the Lord thy God. They shall no more be pulled up. That is the definitive promise, irreversible. And every Jewish family that plants roots in Israel, every vineyard that grows in the Negev, every orchard that blooms in the Galilee, is a living confirmation of these words. And you know what's fascinating? Despite Israel facing a negative migration balance, with more people leaving than entering, and despite all the difficulties of war and political instability, the Israeli government is preparing like never before to receive mass immigrants. They're creating professional integration programs, offering tax incentives, zeroing the income tax rate for new immigrants arriving in 2026, investing 170 million shekels in absorption programs, and conducting emergency immigration simulations. The country is literally preparing for a wave that they believe will come. And I'm left wondering, do they know something that the world hasn't realized yet? Data from the Taub Institute projects that the deficit between departures and arrivals could reach 37,000 people in 2026. But the prophets don't speak of a deficit. The prophets speak of a flood, an avalanche, a multitude that no man can count. So, either the demographers are right and the prophets are wrong, or the prophets are right. And what we see now is just the beginning of something much, much bigger. And here I want to bring a reflection that perhaps you have never heard. Psalm 126 verses 1 to 3 says, When the Lord restored the fortunes of Zion, we were like those who dream. Then our mouth was filled with laughter and our tongue with singing. Then it was said among the nations, The Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us, and so we are joyful. Notice that the psalmist says that even the nations would recognize God's work in Israel's return. And that is exactly what is happening, right? The world's major newspapers are documenting this migration. The BBC, CNN, the New York Times, the Jerusalem Post, they are all publishing detailed reports on the Aliyah wave. The nations are watching. The nations are recording. And even without realizing it, they are fulfilling what the Psalm said. The Lord has done great things for them. When we connect all these points, the picture that forms is impressive. The prophet Zechariah, chapter 8, verse 7 and 8, brings another layer. Thus says the Lord of hosts, Behold, I will save my people from the land of the east and from the land of the setting sun, and I will bring them, and they shall dwell in the midst of Jerusalem. And they shall be my people, and I will be their God. In truth and in righteousness, from the land of the east, and from the land of the setting sun, east and west again, and they shall dwell in Jerusalem. It is curious that, of the North American immigrants who arrived in 2025, most chose Jerusalem as their destination, with 1,097 people settling in the city. Jerusalem, the city that God chose to place His name. The city that is at the center of all the prophecies about the end times. What we are seeing fulfilled is biblical prophecy in real time, before our eyes, with news coverage, with government data, with names and faces of real people making decisions that were prophesied millennia ago. When Jeremiah said the return would be greater than the Exodus, when Ezekiel said God would take the people from among the nations, when Isaiah called the north, the south, the east, and the west, when Amos declared they would never again be uprooted from the land, they were seeing in spirit what we are seeing in the flesh. They wrote with ink what we read in the news. And if the Bible got this right, if it described centuries in advance exactly what we see happening, then the other prophecies that have not yet been fulfilled will also be fulfilled, each one of them in its time, right, in the right way. And that changes everything. It changes how you read the Bible, how you understand the world around you, and how you position yourself for what's to come. Because if the return is real, if Aliyah is happening, if the Jews are returning from all nations exactly as prophesied, then God's prophetic clock is counting down. And every news story about anti-Semitism, every migration statistic, every flight landing at Ben Gurion is another hand on the clock, moving toward the complete fulfillment of the divine plan for Israel and for the world. I know that there are skeptics. I know people look at these prophecies and say they're forced interpretations, coincidences, or projections. But tell me one thing. What other book in the world described centuries in advance that a people would be scattered among all nations, survive, all the empires that tried to destroy them, be hated among all peoples, and then be gathered back to their ancestral land? What other book predicted this? None. Only the Bible. And when reality confirms what the Bible wrote, the only honest response is to recognize we're facing something supernatural, something that transcends politics, sociology, demographics, and any human category of analysis. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you don't miss any videos. And leave it in the comments. Do you think we are living in the end times? Have you noticed other prophetic signs being fulfilled? I want to know your opinion. I want to read every comment. We'll see you in the next video. Stay with God, stay in peace, and may the Lord's blessing be upon your life and upon your home.